Thank you, guys. Yeah, question.
Is this the Q&A time?
I was gonna
That's
make
not
one,
my question.
I was gonna make one special announcement,
Alright, go
but
ahead.
yeah, jump in.
You go ahead. God, I won't interrupt you.
So, due to the whatever adjective you would use to describe Instagram, I've now connected with this guy called the Original Shoe Chef, and he takes apart Jordan sneakers. So there's a thing where people are customizing Jordans. This has been going on for a little while, but people are like deconstructing the sneakers now and rebuilding them with different things. So like if you want a Jordan sneaker, then instead of having like this leather on it, has leather from a Louis Vuitton handbag, you can have that made. So this guy, who I'm connected with now, and he read the book. He said that he can make the Maltese Jordans.
Wow. That's funny.
He can do the real gold leaf and get like little jewels and stuff.
Collector's edition cover.
It might have to happen.
That's perfect. So when the Knicks get Zion,
Yeah.
which is going to happen tonight,
In any minute.
any minute.
Yeah.
By the way, I have not heard Abdul Nabi or wait, what?
Allah Abdel Nabi.
Abdul Nabi in like
Yeah.
25 years.
He's actually a broadcaster now. I did a lot of research for this book, you might know, and it involved like where are they now, Allah Abdel Nabi.
That's awesome.
He had a short NBA career, and for whatever team he played for, he's like their radio guy now or something like that. Allah Abdel Nabi. But yeah. So yeah.
What other basketball players from the 90s did you consider naming in that class? Did you consider that guy who was
That's a good question.
who played for the Grizzlies, who was he's a Muslim. What was his name?
Mahmoud Abdul Rauf,
yeah.
No, not Abdul Rauf.
formerly
Denver.
Chris Jackson.
Was that the guy with the tick?
No, that was the guy.
Yeah,
from
he had
Denver.
Tourette's.
Yeah.
First he was Chris Jackson, then he was
Yeah.
Mahmoud Abdul Rauf.
He had Tourette's.
Right.
Yeah.
But he would just yell out
Yeah.
swears during the
Yeah.
games.
What about Sir Arthur Dunkley?
No, who was that?
Remember from Delaware.
No, I don't remember him.
These are all god names, though, right?
Yeah, it had to be deity names.
Right. So
Mahmoud, I don't remember a guy from the Grizzlies.
could have gone a little
I
bit.
thought you were going for
back.
Muslim names. He was
No,
from
it had to be like Allah is God, God Sham God,
Could have done
obviously.
Moses Malone.
Gotcha.
Gone a little bit
Moses
further.
Malone.
That's too early.
But what does Moses really have at that point?
I
It
don't
was
know.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
But he was
That's a
he was
beginning
done in
name.
90 by 96
Yeah.
probably. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah, he was
He was
toast.
like-
He was like, couldn't, yeah, I don't think the king was ready to pay for Moses Malone. Plus, it's only Moses. It's not like a real deity. He's just one of the guys.
all right.
He did this thing, helped these people, prophet, whatever status you want to give him. He's not like Allah or God. God Sham God is still around because there's a move called the God Sham God, which is a special kind of crossover dribble.
Oh, there.
I think it involves bouncing the ball off your knee while you're going. And so like even young players now know God Sham God. Just for that one weird thing. But the funny thing, like, so today we're staying at this place on 50th Street, right across the street from a high school where I used to play some New York City League games at night when I was working here. And like you see that we saw the kids walking out of the high school and they're all wearing Jordans that were released back in our days. Like when we were in high school or college. Would you just Google the God Sham
Sharif
God?
Abdul-Rahim.
Sharif Abdul Rahim. He wasn't as big as Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. He might have been later.
Better player.
We'll have to compare their stats later. Anyway, so like basically like nobody's come out, arguably no one's come out of college to be as cool of a player as Jordan, and now Zion maybe will be similar. He could something.
That's like a biblical name.
Zion, yeah, like you're down with Mount Zion.
Something like that.
My daughter thinks it's so funny that your name was Buster Nubbins. Jeremy Donaldson here from
So
K-Word.
does my son.
Yeah. She talks about Buster, and so somehow we started talking about it. Oh, I should have brought that. I have 2 copies of Sample that I have to send to you.
That's pretty funny.
You know what's really interesting
Let's-
is listening to you talk about MJ again.
Yeah.
Is it puts you back? It puts me back in that era.
Yeah.
And when you think about Jordan, like there is no comparison. Even I mean, as great as LeBron and Kobe and all those other guys were, there's no one that is even close to how good Michael Jordan was at that time, in my opinion.
Well, LeBron is going to star in Space Jam 2. So by that comparison,
That was a terrible movie.
Yeah, it was.
they're watching.
I think like the millennials really like it. think
I
it's
never
the
saw Space
millennial
Jam.
classic.
I just
I
watched
don't
it
think I
again
ever
with my
saw it.
son.
I never saw it. I want to watch it soon with my daughter, but when it came out, I was in college or out of college, and I did not have time for something that
Don't do
involved
it.
Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. don't
But
do it.
soon I have to. I've seen clips of it. But Space Jam 2. So, other questions? Sorry to put you on the spot. I could ask questions.
How many pairs of sneakers do you own?
Thank you.
Less than 15.
Like minimalist.
Less than 15?
Yeah.
Very responsible.
Less than 10, maybe.
But what's
Wow.
the cumulative number? Because sometimes you send them back or
Yeah.
you sell them.
I did
So it's not-
downsize a little bit. So the thing was, at some point, I was buying a lot of shoes to research for this book, and there was a pair of Jordan 11 low that came out with gold all around the bottom. And I bought those because I thought, well, someday I'll be doing a reading in a New York City bookstore, and it'll be really cool to have these sneakers with gold on the bottom. And then months later, I was like, I could get $200 if I just mailed these back to Nike. All right, done. So I did that. It was like 170 even, not even. And so I did that, and now I don't have them, which is fine because the 11 highs is very different than the 11 lows. But I might have to go all in with the original Shoe Chef and get these with some cubic zirconia mounted all over them.
All right, I have a real question.
Yeah.
So, did you struggle with integrating Jack Palms into this storyline at all, or was there a point where you thought maybe this would be a completely separate story without him involved?
No, like this all happened organically. A friend of mine from grad school was editing my stuff then. So we went to Kauai for vacation. I was like, gotta write this trip off. I'll write a story that takes place in Kauai.
Awesome.
And I gave it to Dan. It was just supposed to be a short story. And somehow while I was writing it, when he first goes to Modi's house, there's this crazy sneaker closet at Modi's house that has like all these sneakers. And when I first started writing it, I thought that to have those sneakers, you needed to have the ones that were made in 1996. But I didn't realize that they were remaking them and releasing them all the time now. So now, like, you just wait a while and any sneaker you want comes out and you can have it. And it's great because it's like all the sneakers that I couldn't get in high school, now I can get if I just wait. So, anyway, what was the question?
Jack Palms.
Oh, right. So at the story, it had Jack Palms in it, and he was. So Dan read it. He said the sneaker part is cool. You need to make this into a novel. So I did, and it involved Jack chasing after this guy, and Modi is like a total sneakerhead, and Jack kind of represents my my consciousness of like having this real interest in Jordan and being alive and really aware of basketball at that point and loving sneakers, but not having anything in my life that told me I could just like pull the ripcord and have like 60 pairs of shoes or 80 pairs of shoes. Turns out I was teaching in the East Bay in California, and I had a student who was just like this normal guy, 20-year-old nurse, lives at home with his parents, 80 to 100 pairs of Jordans in his house. And he sold them down to like 60 at some point. He just has like crazy pairs of Jordans. And so I connected with him and started to get more into the sneaker world and to learn about things like Sneaker Con and all these sneaker shops and releases. And I started to do the research by reading stuff like the Bobito Garcia book. And there was this book called Slam Kicks. Slam Magazine used to have a quarterly that they put out about sneakers that was called Kicks. And there's a book that they have. And there was a TV show on complex.com called Quick Strike, which is about sneakers. And so these two guys, Russ Bankston and DJ Clark Kent, would just sit on there and talk about the new sneaker releases for like 20 minutes. Have you watched this? It's great. Quick Strike is my favorite show. They stopped making it, but Russ Bankston responds to my tweets now, which is one of the coolest things in the world.
There's a ton of them now, shows like that.
But now with Russ Bankston and DJ Clark Kent. Yeah, now they have that guy that goes to the stores with the people and they buy all, yeah, whatever. But Quick Strike was better. So anyway, I started doing a ton of research. Jack Palms was like the guy who really liked sneakers from the old days and sort of was getting pulled into it. So as he gets to know about the story of the Maltese Jordans, at first he's like just in it to get Modi back to San Francisco and get the money, but he's sort of pulled in more and more to the history and the story of the sneakers and just like really gets sucked into it. And they end up, the last part of the book takes place in New York around the sneaker con. The book takes place in 2014, and some interesting characters show up towards the end. There's some characters that show up that I won't spoil. But there's some real twists and turns.
How did you decide to make it in 2014?
I was writing it in 2014.
Mm.
And so I was writing it about that period, and that was right before the Warriors started winning. And so, yeah, there it is. And in Everyone Pays, the Warriors are winning. So it's like evolution of the Warriors. Yeah.
As someone who knows close to nothing about basketball,
Yeah.
are there mythical shoes out there that people conjecture about existing? Like how much is there, like, not just like sneaker collection, but like specific sneaker hunting?
Yeah. So there's a term in sneaker culture called dead stock, which means like a sneaker that's never been worn. And the reason that term evolved was because these guys, most of them were in New York City in sneaker culture. They would find out that like some weird sporting goods store in Iowa had like a whole back room full of these crazy Air Max that no one in Iowa wanted to buy. And the store in Iowa would call that their dead stock because they're like, we're not even selling this. But these guys in New York City would find out that there's Air Max 95s at this store in Iowa and buy the whole thing. And then they would have them and they say, this is dead stock, we're selling it. And so that became a term.
Is
But-
there like a,
yeah.
but it's like the culture of buying like signed game worn sneakers the same as
Well, there was a
like
pair of, so
collecting sneakers?
in '97, Jordan had this game against Utah in the finals that was called the flu game.
Sure.
And he gave the sneakers after that game to the ball boy for the Utah Jazz signed. And the kid
Oh.
just held them and sold them online 2 or 3 years ago for $90-something thousand. Because it's like they're the original shoes. Jordan wore them, and they're from a single game
That's the
that
game
was
that
really
I thought
memorable.
you were gonna get to when you were talking about
Oh,
which
the flu
were they
game?
from. I thought it was.
Yeah.
I was trying to do the math. And I was like, that was the mid-90s.
But everyone knows those were 12s. Come on.
Well, that's why I was like 11, right?
There's a big difference between sports
95,
memorabilia
96?
and sneaker collecting. And
Right.
Okay, that's what I was gonna.
Yeah,
That's
so
what I was thinking.
Sometimes those two can come together.
Right.
But I think they're sneakerheads are more interested in actual design than sports memorabilia.
Yeah, that's true.
But if it's
And
in your
rarity.
book where it's like the one, that's the only pair.
Yeah.
That's the
Well, so
problem
that's
with
the other
code.
thing
The
is
two
that,
come
like,
together, yeah.
exactly.
The really expensive pair of Kanye Yeezys are these Red Octobers that were released in a really limited quantity. And so one of those was signed, and someone was offered $96,000 for it. New York Times article at New York SneakerCon. Kid didn't sell it. But there's other pairs that have been made by Nike, like for Eminem or player exclusives. Like they made like a special couple of pairs for Ray Allen after he won his second ring. So there's some that have been issued in very limited supplies. There's this one pair of Eminem Carhartt 4s that they have over here at, if you go up to Flight Club on Broadway and 14th around there, they have every Jordan, and like some of them are like more than $20,000, and you can see them there in a glass case and buy them, and they're not signed, but some of these are just like so limited in quantity, And so what happens is that it will be a collaboration with a certain designer or shoe shop, and it's just like the materials, the person, the limited release, and it's really big. Like Travis Scott, I don't know who this is, but he just had a Jordan drop last weekend that sold. It was like 180 to buy it, and like immediately it's like $400 or $500. If you have them, you can sell them right away for $400 or $500. The app crashed.
As you were researching for this book, did you
Yeah.
ever encounter a real example of Jordan playing for money, like big time money, against somebody that ever actually occurred? Because we all know that he was sort of a big gambler
Yeah.
and had debts and all that kind of stuff, but in your research, did you see any of these events?
So I think no. Like I think what Jordan did was gamble probably on golf. Like there was a story when he was playing the Knicks in the playoffs. He was at the casino in Atlantic City until 3:00 in the morning the night before a game, and people were like knew that he was there, so he got in trouble for that. So before he retired from baseball, part of what the book is about is this conspiracy theory that's out there about why Jordan retired from baseball, and how it was right after the Pete Rose scandal, and possibly the commissioner said, "Hey, you're gambling a lot. If it comes out that you're gambling on games, we're all screwed. So you need to go away for a while." And so this is where the baseball thing came out of. And there was a weird question where they said, like, do you think you'll ever come back to basketball? And Jordan said something like, if the commissioner will let me. So there was something weird. And the book is about that. And ultimately, part of the reason the Jordans are so expensive in this book is because they were to pay off this really expensive golf debt that Jordan had to this celebrity who will not be named right now. And yeah, so they just got super expensive. But the reason Jordan did it was because it was after he came back to basketball, he lost a big debt in golf, and then knew that like if it came out that he needed money for that, even if he got it from the Bulls or out of his bank, the league would know, and he could get in trouble for gambling again, lose his career. So he had to go to this crazy thing, and Phil Knight kind of like hushed it.
Interesting.
Yeah, but like, there's a video, I've seen videos of NBA players gambling on basketball for each other, like pickup, and they say like, oh, we'll play for this much, your charity against my charity, and like they don't give each other money, but in theory it goes to the charity. Like there was one where Kobe Bryant was with Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie Irving thought he was really good, and Kobe was like, I'll destroy you right now. And Kyrie's like, I'll play you for $10,000. Your charity, my charity. And they didn't play. But if they gamble on basketball games, people get in big trouble. Pete Rose really locked that up for everyone.
That's what I was gonna say, is that Jordan, I don't know if he would agree to play for a payday, but he might agree to play for a bet.
I don't know. But he did have that love of the game clause. So a lot of the stuff in the book is true. And then there's this whole Saudi Arabia, Malta story that's totally made up. And some people have had a hard time distinguishing between what's fact and what's fiction. But there are parts that are actually made up. It's not all true. Vicky would attest that some of it is not true.
You said some people were having a hard time believing or not believing.
Yeah. These two guys did a review of the book for a podcast called Booked, and they thought it was all true. They're convinced that the Maltese Jordans are out there. So maybe I'll have to get the original shoe chef to make them.
Yeah.
And then I'll just throw them up on eBay
And then
for
sell 'em to
$1
those
million.
guys.
Those guys are loaded.
You know, you can read this book without knowing what so many of you know, and all of it, you know, not be a major basketball fan or know everything about sneakers. I mean, that even makes it more interesting because you know nothing. So you're diving into this, you know, other world. And
Yeah. I mean,
and
I know.
there's enough, you know, I mean, there's so much else on top of all of this sneaker
Yeah.
stuff and basketball stuff that, you know,
It's a fun story.
it's a fun story.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and you don't have to have read the earlier books. This is the fifth book in the series. But you don't have to have read the earlier books to appreciated. Although in the new editions, they all look really nice on
I
your
saw
shelf.
that. It was really nice. Serious design. It's great.
Yeah, so I just did. In the past year, I've gotten the rights back to some of these books, and so I've reissued them myself with all new covers that like are all cohesive, and I'll get stickers that say like book 1, book 2, book 3, and yeah, so they're there, and you know I'd be happy to sign any of them for you tonight. It's great for you guys to come out, and this bookstore is a wonderful store and business. So we all must do our part to buy books. I see a couple that I have my eyes on.
Seth,
Yeah.
can I ask you about process?
Yes,
You said you
please.
Yes, you wrote this organically,
Yeah,
and out of the short story, so
yeah,
I take it you're a pantster,
yeah.
not a plotster, and that's good. So how much of the short story had evolved that you could, you know, almost see it as the baseline or even an outline of the book itself?
0.
Or did you just go off and
0. I literally just set out to like write something that was this long, and I just kind of stuck an end on it. And my friend read it, and I had no idea why the sneakers were there. I just wrote them in, and it wasn't even the Maltese Jordans. It was just that this guy he was after was a crazy sneaker collector, and so he said, "You got to turn this into a novel." And he was right about the passion and connection that I had to that part, and so I just picked up where that ended and just went with it. And so she's talking about plotting and pantsing, which is like some people plot and write from an outline, and other people fly by the seat of their pants. So they're called pantsers. And to me, it's just like organically finding the story. It's similar to how you read a story. It's like you sit there and you don't know what's going to happen next. And that's the fun of reading. And so in this process, that's the fun of writing as well. You leave it so that you know what's going to happen right for the next little bit, and then that gets you going. And once you write through that, you know what's going to happen for the next day. But it's like driving at night with your in a fog with your lights on. Like you can get half wherever you need to go, but you never see all the way there. And it's fun is the thing. Like I've tried doing outlines or tried like writing to an outline and thought like, well, this will be the way to get a book done fast, or like get a book that's super thrilling, or whatever adjective. And the reality is like at the end of the day, the writing process, it has to be fun, or else why do it? And so this is the way that I've found to write. I mean, I've tried, you look at the books over there's a bunch of them. There's 7 or something. And I've tried a lot of different ways and tried to write a lot of different kinds of books. And the books that have meant the most to me are Young Junius, because it took place in Cambridge, where I grew up when I grew up. And it was like The Wire, which was my favorite show for a long time. And it had a lot of African American characters from Cambridge, which was fascinating to me, but sort of risky to write as a white man. And I just really loved writing about this place and these characters kind of from my youth. And now my new favorite book is this one, because it's just like, I've always sort of had the lid on the passion about basketball sneakers, because people in my life were rational and thought it was crazy to like have more than 2 pairs of sneakers that you could just like pluck off the shelf and wear that look really clean. And I just really dove into that. And the world of sneakerheads and sneaker collecting is giant. It's growing and it's big, and it's like, it's getting bigger and bigger. Like just in the last year, these 2 new apps, StockX and GOAT, have shown up where people are like trading sneakers like stocks, and people like the resale market is it's a huge thing.
there was a museum exhibit.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
these guys were talking about it.
Yeah, he
Brooklyn.
was
Yeah.
traveling. Where did I see that? It was here,
It
right?
was in Brooklyn,
At the
Brooklyn
Met?
Museum.
The Brooklyn Museum?
Yeah, about maybe 4 years ago, something like that.
Hmm.
We saw about
It was at the
history of
Oakland-
sneakers. Yeah.
It was at the Museum of
Yeah.
Oakland in California.
I think it was traveling.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember seeing it.
yeah. Well, there was
It was
also
great.
when we were here a couple of years ago, yeah,
Yeah.
I missed it in Kentucky. But well, yeah, when we were here a couple of years ago, we were at the Whitney, and there was like a whole wall of gold painted sneakers, and that was like an exhibit at the Whitney. And then you go downtown and you go into the Kith store, and it's like the same thing is like the decoration of this store. It's just fascinating to see the conjunction of all these different things: sports, art, fashion design, technology, culture. It's amazing, and it's really been fun to dig into.
Did you ever go to SneakerCon?
You know, we were here on a weekend that turned out that SneakerCon was here, and I think it was beyond. I think SneakerCon had sort of peaked at that point. And it was like, at a certain point, SneakerCon was kind of amazing, and now it's just like all these kids walking around with like tons of sneakers that they've been holding on to, trying to sell their sneakers, and I just think it's not really. I decided not to go. It was up at.
Right.
I was lazy. Could have gone, didn't go. But I've done like a sneaker tour of special shops around here, and being a size 14, like there's nothing, but there's some really cool stores to go to that I'll be checking out while we're here. Yeah.
There's another aspect of the book that I found really interesting, which is there's some real fighting that happens.
Yeah.
And I'm not somebody who's necessarily drawn to like fight scenes, but I found it really compelling in the way that you like wrote about it. And I know that you box sometimes, but I don't know a lot about the research that you did for that and knowing like what kinds of shots hit where and how they affect. So can you talk about that aspect of your writing and how you researched that?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
It's funny because this is my wife asking the question. And I didn't plant this
I
question.
really have no idea.
But at my last reading, I told my friend from high school to ask a similar question. And the reason I planted that question with him was because that reading was in Cambridge, in Porter Square, at a mall. Oh, Tom, you should hear this. You know that mall in Porter Square where Porter Square Books is?
I had a homeless guy buy me booze there.
So I got into a fight. When I was 14, I fought right in front of that Dunkin' Donuts with this guy who later turned out to be a kickboxing champion of the United States.
Wow.
So that was the research, was getting my butt kicked by Rudy Ott outside the Dunkin' Donuts.
But I also want to say that I had thought about asking that question before you told me that Ori was going to ask that question.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear about that.
So,
That was my own question.
yeah, so I've done,
It was not planted. Yeah.
yeah, and the Dunkin' Donuts thing doesn't come across as well here in New York. I don't have any good New York City fighting stories.
So did you walk past his office and he's, like,
Yeah.
No, so
action?
when I was in
Yeah.
Berkeley,
The mirror.
I was
Yeah.
living in Berkeley and I was doing a significant amount of sparring. Basically, after I stopped playing basketball for health and aging reasons, boxing was something I took up. That was a really good workout. And I'm not like sparring with people and getting punched. It's just like hitting mitts and stuff like that. And it's great. I like it. It's a really fun workout. It's really great. And so with that, I've learned different punches and where they go and the names of punches and the vernacular. But it's also a lot about what we've been talking about in our workshop about slowing down. And if you read a guy like Lee Child, like his fight scenes are really compelling because everything seems like it slows down. And so maybe earlier on in my career, I would write a fight scene fast, and now I really slow down. And part of what's cool about that is that it gives you the sense that the character is really good at fighting because he can like see it really slowly. Like they talk about athletes like seeing things in slow motion if they're really good. And so it's like if a guy is really seeing the punches come in and landing his punches in a long, detailed, drawn out thing, it makes you think the fighter is the guy's a good fighter, and it helps the reader because we've been talking about in our classes so much to like really slow down everything, because it's just like when I first started writing, there's a confidence question of like how long can this scene go? Oh my God, I can't keep anyone in scene for too long because they'll get bored, and my students are totally nodding because everyone is messing with this. And it's like, yeah, you start out and you're like, I gotta write this everything has to be so fast because readers will get bored. And the reality is that once you start to really slow down, if you're writing well, then that really connects with readers, and they want to read whatever you write or wherever the characters go. And so in my earlier books, the violence is it's like mayhem. There's like car chases and explosions and guns and all this stuff, and it's like action movies. And this one is much more tampered down. There's a few fights in people's houses and one in a hotel room, and it's like some people get knocked around.
Well, and the 300-pound
Yeah.
Hawaiian brothers.
So there are these giant Hawaiian brothers called the Kaloa brothers.
Where you got those characters?
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, there are these macadamia nuts in Hawaii called Kaloa. And then I just got the idea that they should all have names from The Tonight Show. Like their mom was a big fan of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, so they each have different Johnny Carson names, and then the youngest one is Leno. And so they're all big guys, and they're kind of like out of WWF. And so Jack fights them, but it's not like there's no limbs
the
getting
mom's
chopped
kitchen.
off.
Right.
They fight in the mom's kitchen. No limbs get chopped off. No bones get broken. And then at the end, after they fight, even a little bit, they're like kind of friends. So it's definitely a different level of violence. But yeah, slowing it down and just feeling like I know how to do this now. This is the thing that I'm trying to get across to my students, and I'm seeing it's really coming along for a lot of them. Yeah. Maybe one more question, or should we just go for the beer and wine? Beer and wine, buy books, take all the books, buy all the books, buy a copy for your friends, your loved ones, anybody.
Are you signing books?
I'm signing books. I'll be signing books right here. I have my special sharp Sharpie, and I'll be more than happy to do that for all of you guys. Thank you again for coming.
What's your shirt?
This is a Jordan 1 made out of ice cream melting. It's an ice cream cone. My daughter thinks this shirt is great. And these are Jordan 4 original. Jeremy will recognize these socks.
I was going to mention them before. I didn't
Yeah.
want to be rude.
Midnight
Midnight
Marauders
yeah.
from our
Nice.
K-Word days.
1993.
So these sneakers, now they come out with all these different colors, and these ones have the original Nike Air branding on the back, which makes it a really big deal. Because now they just put the Jordan Jumpman on the
Makes
back.
them have them.
The remakes have Jordan Jumpman on the back. Ugh. It's
That's what I was
totally
gonna say when you were talking about how they produce the sneakers. That surely there's some way to tell. Oh, this is the.
Oh yeah, you know
It's in
immediately.
2011,
A
not the one
total
that was released in 96.
aficionado would be like, "Oh, that's
Yeah.
the 2017 release of that brand." Oh yeah, those were the breads from 2011. Yeah, or they would ask someone. Yeah, it's okay to do that sometimes. But yeah, very exciting. Thank you very
Cool.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.